So, The Elder Scrolls 6 still doesn't have a release date. At this point, more time has passed between the announcement trailer and today than the time that passed between Skyrim's release and the trailer. During this time, we've seen many games with a similar formula, from Avowed to Dragon's Dogma 2 to Kingdom Come Deliverance, but none have directly replaced it. I think I did a video on this very subject. Games are Scrolls-like, but not Scrolls-exact. Despite the gap in the market and massive fan demands, it's still been 14 years since we got an Elder Scrolls game, and it could be many more years before we see the Elder Scrolls 6. But today's video is about a game that is a direct sequel, not to Skyrim, but to Elder Scrolls 1 and Elder Scrolls 2. So much so, the same people who worked on those games are working on this one. This is not just the closest thing to match the Elder Scrolls series in its design, but it may even turn out to be better. This game is called the Wayward Realms. In today's video, I will be discussing the game and giving fans a good insight, but I will also have help from someone at Once Lost Games, the studio behind the game. I managed to sit down with Victor, the creative director for the Wayward Realms. With a notebook in hand, I bombarded him with tons of questions and managed to get a full summary of what the game is and what fans should expect. But as always, before we get into it, let me just ask for the usual. If you love gaming content and discussions about it, please consider subscribing. Okay, so let's start with a full summary of what the Wayward Realms is. In order for me to do that correctly though, we need to know what the Elder Scrolls Arena and Daggerfall are, Elder Scrolls 1 and 2. So Bethesda released Skyrim in 2011, Oblivion before that in 2006, and Morrowind before that in 2002. Now these were handcrafted worlds with exploration, side quests and player freedom as the main feature. Before these three titles, the Elder Scrolls had two entries, in Arena and Daggerfall. These games were quite different, mainly in that the game world was procedurally generated. Daggerfall aimed to create a world larger than any previous RPG, filled with thousands of towns and dungeons, allowing players to travel freely in any direction. The game featured 15,000 towns and a population of 750,000 people, further emphasizing the game's scale. There is so much more that I can say about these games, but the most important thing to know is that the game was far bigger than Skyrim, Oblivion and Morrowind, and it offered a lot more content. Rather than handcrafted content, the game automatically created it. It was a different experience, but due to limited technology, demand for games and graphics at that time, it didn't do as well as it should have. Now, before Morrowind was released, Bethesda had a complete restructure. Todd Howard took control, and key developers of the previous games left. Two of those that left were Julian LeFay and Ted Peterson. These two are now the brains behind the Wayward Realms. It is known as the spiritual successor of the Elder Scrolls Daggerfall, and it attempts to bring that formula and its world design to current times. It is what's called a grand RPG, meaning it will include thousands of cities with thousands of NPCs living within them, whole regions with distinct landscapes and architecture, different races, an unlimited amount of quests, dungeons and things to find. It is truly a whole new type of game that we've not seen since Daggerfall. A landmass of over 100 islands, steeped in political intrigue, it offers many playstyles and ways of approaching quests. This could not only rival the Elder Scrolls 6, but perhaps introduce an entire new type of game, a game that truly lasts forever. Here's a quick elevator pitch. It is an open world game that offers both first and third person perspectives, multiple weapons and combat styles. The world is massive. It's been quoted to be twice the size of the UK, and it contains different regions with different races who all have different factions and different ways of building architecture. Although the general map will be the same for each player, the events that take place on the world will differentiate each time. Quests, dungeons, and content will be procedurally generated, meaning that the game can go on forever. Like the Elder Scrolls, there will be towns, cities, shops, thieves' dens, and other locations. There are stats to level up, role-playing mechanics, stealth options, and true player freedom on how to approach the game. If you've played Daggerfall, imagine that with today's technology and graphics. If you've only played Skyrim, imagine that game with a map 100 times larger where the world reacts to what you do and the content never ends. Now, I was lucky enough to sit down with Victor for an interview, and he explains it so much better than I can. So without further ado, let's jump straight into the interview.
First thing I just wanted to ask is if you could explain to people who may not know, who are Once Lost Games? Who's the team there? What's their experience? Just a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, Once Lost Games is really the child, I guess you could say, of Julian, LeFay, and Ted Peterson, who are two of the original creators of the Elder Scrolls series, with Julian being the lead programmer for Arena, and then the creative director, the director for Daggerfall, and then he did Battlespire as well. And then Ted Peterson did lead writing and design for Arena and Daggerfall. And then he did a little bit of design and lore book writing and stuff for Morrowind and Oblivion after that, but just like on a contract basis. So yeah, they're very deep ingrained in that series. And since Daggerfall was the last game that they worked on together, it's been like 20-some years, and they got back together, and they were kind of just discussing, like, what would that next game be like? What would Elder Scrolls 3 have been like if they had stuck with their, original designs that they had for Daggerfall, which is the huge procedurally created world, a lot of in-depth character creation, skills, all that stuff. And so it kind of went from a what if to a why not, and they decided let's do this thing. Let's form a new studio. Let's make that game that we wanted to make those many years ago. So we started off in 2019 with just like a few volunteers, and it's really been a volunteer project for most of its life. Things like slowly escalated. We got more and more people. Became better structured as a studio, and finally we had a Kickstarter last year, which was successful. We managed to get, people on full time on the project and really working on it, and really we've become a proper studio now.
If you could just sort of give me sort of like an elevator pitch for someone who doesn't know what Wayward Realms is, if they were just going to hear it for the first time, what would you summarize it as?
Well, it's the spiritual successor to the Elder Scrolls 2 Daggerfall, and what that means is we're really taking scope and scale as like the major focus of the game. We want a realistically scaled world, so it's huge, big cities, hundreds or thousands of NPCs depending on the size of the city. Really deep role-playing systems. We got a lot of skills that you can focus in on and really like create the character that you want to make. Really that player freedom. And driving it all is what we call the virtual game master, or VGM, which is sort of our version of like a tabletop game master who, a good tabletop game master will know their players, know what they're interested in doing, and sort of shape quests and adventures around that. And that's basically what we're trying to do with this system, where it can learn what a player enjoys doing, know how their actions are affecting the world, the factions that they're allied with, their enemies, and then just kind of build new quests and stories around that. Yeah. This is something a little different. It's not just an RPG. We're really aiming for a new class of game. Like, nobody has really made a game like Daggerfall in all that time. Yeah. And so it's who better to do it than the original creators of Daggerfall. So hopefully we're on the right track and got something really special.
Because the game uses procedural generated content, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, in the gaming industry, we've seen games like Starfield attempt it, many different games. And sort of the consensus has been that when it does branch out, sometimes it loses that quality, I'd say. It becomes more spread out than concise. Is that something you guys have taken into consideration? Like, how do you find that balance?
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's always been one of the major concerns, and really something we try to think of and solve. How do you keep that huge scale but also make it interesting to the player? And part of the answer to that is that VGM, where it can, it knows what the player is doing, and it can sort of, send things their way, whether it be, like say, a random encounter or, just quests that make that world interesting instead of just, bland and boring. But the other thing is also just, we kind of have this philosophy, like, the player doesn't need to be interacted with every 5 minutes, right? You don't have to run into an enemy every 10 meters, right? Like, sometimes just enjoying that big landscape can be, fun and engaging on itself, like, riding through the woods in the rainstorm or fishing at a creek, by sunset. So we hope that the world, there will be stuff to do in it, but we hope that it itself can be engaging for the players as well, just taking in that landscape and really just marveling at the size and beauty of it, because the graphics nowadays can really create these really gorgeous looking worlds, and we think that's also something that's engaging as well.
And then in regards to things like towns or cities, in this case, dungeons, things like that sort of look unique, would you say? Will they have unique assets? Will it be a different experience?
Sure. Well, I know for Daggerfall, one of the major problems that it had was it was pretty much just working with modules, right? There's these little pre-built sections, and it just, copy and pasted them around to make the dungeons or the cities and stuff like that. Nowadays, we don't have to do it that way. And especially for dungeons, we use a wave function collapse. So that means that the layout each time can be completely unique to itself. So you won't, learn a specific part of the dungeon, oh, I know there's a hidden door in that section there, kind of thing, because it could be anywhere. And the other thing is just breaking down those, the building blocks that we do have, whether it's a wall or a pillar, door frame, just breaking those down and making sure it can have that variety as well. So it's not just, every wall looks exactly the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
And on top of that, there is also cultural styles. Obviously, within a region, most things will look pretty similar because that would be their culture, right? So they have a sort of pretty similar looking theme. But within the world at large, we have, She, which is the Orcish kingdom, Splendor, which is the human kingdom, Iwarden, which is where the elves live, Marathweir, which is sort of a desert wasteland kind of thing. And so those also play into those themes and, the unique look of these areas. Will be for any major important dungeons and stuff like that, they'll get a hand pass over where we might, tweak certain things to make them really stand out. But for the most part, 99% will wind up being just procedurally generated. The map is, I guess, for the most part, static, right? Every time you start up a game, it's the same map, same layout. Everybody gets the same thing. But during the course, some things might change, a village might be, destroyed or something if it's caught in the middle of a battle, kind of thing. So it's a little dynamic in that sense, but for the most part, it's the same map for everyone. There wouldn't be any artificial boundaries or anything like that. It's just meant to be one big world, and you can go from island to island. We'll have ships in the game as well, so you can sail around. We do have seasons planned as well, so you'll see a change in that way as well. I think we've shared a few peeks at the towns, but those are all small so far. We do have something planned for this summer. We'll showcase the actual city in action, where you can see it just build out, and it, literally hundreds of houses we can do at once, and we populate it with all these NPCs, and they're sort of just walking around doing their thing. So it the goal is just it should look and feel like a city. It should be bustling, a lot of people moving around, a lot of houses, just really that large scale that we want to focus in on.
Will there be merchants, shops, things of that nature in the game?
Yep, absolutely. We want to support the thief characters as well, so there'll be fences in the game that you can sell stolen goods to. Your typical armor, weapons smith, have pawnbrokers as well. If you just want to unload all your junk, take it to the pawnbroker. You're gonna pay you a little less, but you can just unload it all at once. We've got banks in there as well because, like Daggerfall, coins will have weight. So if you're getting too much, you're getting bogged down, go take it to the bank, deposit it, start saving up.
And for the NPCs, what are the interactions? Like, can you talk to everybody? Can you pickpocket? Can you attack everybody? Is that an option?
Yeah, yes, and yes. Basically, every NPC will be interactable. With the way the VGM is meant to work, any NPC could become something bigger in the grand scheme of things. Like, they won't be, you can't suddenly make them king or anything like that, but, they can be a quest giver, something that becomes important to the player. And it can be anybody off the streets. It doesn't have to be a pre-made character that we've chosen.
Is there in fact, I've seen it, but dialogue in the game, is that something taken into that as well? Like, does it create conversations, or are they pre-written?
Well, and I guess just to add some clarity, we are using an LLM, a large language model, as part of the VGM. It's part of the system that helps it, parse out the player data and understand what they're doing, how it should be affecting the world. But it also ties into the dialogue as well. So the idea there is we have a keyword system. So, you're not picking an actual response that we've listed out. You just kind of pick the keywords and topics of conversation. And we let the player sort of role play what they would have said in their head, right? That's kind of part of the design choice there. But so you select your keyword, and then the LLM will generate the responses from that. And part of that is just to keep it, from hallucinating, going off the rails, saying, crazy stuff that doesn't exist in the game. And it's all just trained on our writers' work. And we write up the quests, and it learns from those quests and the dialogue, and then all the lore that we've done. And we've done, we have partially implemented so far, and it's working just the way we like it. So we're pretty excited about that. But yeah, the idea is it's always it's able to adapt to what's happening to the world and to the player, and even be able to reword things like that NPC would be talking. So if it's like a noble, they'll have more proper speech, right? While the the pirate is gonna talking more pirate.
I tried to ask, and I'm assuming the answer is no. Will there be any voice acting in the game?
No, other than just some greetings, grunts, battle cries, just the usual little barks that NPCs will do. But we, due to the nature of the quest and how it's dynamic and the dialogue can be adapted to the different characters and stuff, there's no way to do proper voice acting for it. We do want to do text to speech as accessibility, just some people like it, just can't handle all the text, right? Or can't see well or something. But so we do have that plan, just a simple text to speech, probably like a male and a female voice only. Probably we do want to offer modding tools, so I'm sure somebody will take that and just go bonkers with it, and we can have like fully AI voiced if people want it. Again, like I said, it's a keyword system, so you don't get really in-depth dialogue to choose from, but like you get to pick different options and stuff. And then another thing we're doing that I think is pretty fun is, say like you talk to a character, they don't like you want to charm them. Usually in a game you have to back out of the conversation, cast the charm spell, go back in, go through the same steps. Here we're actually having it to where you can just do it off the dialogue screen. So you're talking to them, they don't like you, click on that charm option and you've charmed them mid-conversation. You can keep going from there. And it's not only that, like you can pickpocket them through the dialogue. You can throw the first punch if you just want to fight them, get the leg up on that. So
obviously we have some games that have I guess you call like an easy quest, right? So generated, go here, grab item, come back. And then
right.
You've got games like The Witcher 3, which are decision making, different elements, really condensed stories. What sort of approach are you taking with the quest? Will there be a mix in there? Is decision making an aspect in the role playing game?
Well, definitely a mix, because we do want to have like some of those simple quests, the fetch quests, or the go kill this enemy kind of quest in there, because those are fun to do and just simple if you're looking for like some extra gold or you only have a few minutes to play the game, right? But really, and especially with the VGM system and the way that the world is constantly evolving and moving. The quests are meant to be very, very dynamic. So we do have like faction storylines that players can play through and have that overall narrative, but like within them, the quests themselves are meant to adapt to what's happening in the world, what the player's been doing, who they've been interacting with. So they're very dynamic in that sense, where I guess an example I like to use is like if you talk to an NPC very often, right? He's like your go-to NPC, like that VGM is meant to recognize that, and then they could be a quest giver, or they can be involved in a quest, like maybe they were kidnapped by your rival faction, so now you have to save them, kind of thing. So it's supposed to always adapt and just be really engaging with what the player has been up to. It's so, because again, part of the problem with the procedural stuff is sometimes it doesn't feel like it's has anything to do with you, right? It's just been generated. Here's random thing to do. But this way, it makes it part of your storyline, because these are things that people you've interacted with, your enemies, your allies, and so even these randomly generated, random again in quotations, generated quests can feel like they're important to you. I do want to mention another thing that sort of our quest philosophy is: there is no fail state. So if you didn't accomplish your objective, that doesn't mean you just failed the quest and have to reload or something like that. It has a conclusion, and then the world will adapt to whatever that conclusion was. So maybe your quest giver is angry at you, but an enemy of theirs likes that happens. So now you've got a reputation boost with them, kind of thing. So that's sort of our philosophy going into the quest. There's no fail state. It's just a conclusion, and the world reacts to the player.
I'm assuming when you start the game, will there be a prologue, or is the player said, look, go explore?
Well, there is a prologue, and that's actually what the early access is meant to be. It's supposed to be the prologue chapter on the starting island. And so from there, then you'll be free to, explore once the full game's out, explore the rest of the archipelago and just go wherever you want and interact with the world in all sorts of different ways. Decision-making
in games feels personable to the player. But now you're talking about something that is extra personal, because it's with
exactly.
NPCs they interact. So people will be able to share stories like, this happened to me, but it's going to be unique to them. I mean, that is absolutely incredible.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because I remember one comment, I think it was on a YouTube video that we did, where somebody was worried about, like, if everything's tailored just to the player, then nobody's going to have that, common thing to discuss. Like, you remember when you played through this quest line or whatever, and this happened, right? But we think it's more fun and interesting to see those differences. Like, oh, this happened to me, and like, wow, that this other crazy thing happened to me instead. So we think that will be a lot of fun.
Is there established lore in the world, like races, gods, things of that nature?
We've got 8 playable races. They're human, dwarf, elf, orc, goblin, ogre, cambion, and fae. And they'll each have their own unique stat bonuses to go along with them, and then unique racial abilities as well. So the whole, we want choices to matter. That comes as early as the race that you pick. There'll be some factions that are racially exclusive, so if you pick the wrong one, you might not even be able to interact with them at all. So we really want that choice to matter for players, and that comes with the races. But going back to the question, we've got probably thousands of pages of lore written up for the game so far, and that, like, we've even got some prehistory that we've written up. Now nobody knows it in the game or in the world because it's prehistoric and nobody wrote any of that stuff down. But that's how deep we've gone into this world building. We've got like a really great set of writers who just they come up with such good stuff. And again, like influence from all sorts of different games and stuff that tie into this. So yeah, we want it to feel like a real world, and that includes all the crazy lore that's behind it. We do have, on the god side, we do have 6 goddesses that are observed on the archipelago, which is this game's setting. But there are other gods in the rest of the world, some different versions of these same goddesses in the other parts of the world as well. So like that, I think that kind of shows how deep we try to go into it. It's not just this are the goddesses, and they're observed everywhere in the world for some reason. There's different cultures. The races aren't monoculture either. Not all orcs are the same. Some orcs have completely different culture from what you'll see here on the archipelago.
Because I know there's how many classes?
Well, we actually have a classless system, so we will offer some for pre-made classes that you can just quickly start up a game with. But for the most part, the first option you're going to see is the custom class option, where you be able to just go in, pick your skills, and really create the kind of character that you want. I guess it's probably worth noting that we have attributes, but what you're putting all your points in is skills. And as you use those skills, they'll level up. As the skill levels up, they'll level up the appointed attribute. So it's sort of like one of our designers likes to say it this way: we don't have smithing, that's not part of the game, but he says you're strong because you're a good smith, you're not a good smith because you are strong, right? So
right.
It's that idea, like you level up that skill, then you sort of become stronger or more perceptive or whatever, because you are getting better at those skills. These skills actually they'll be pretty varied. So like we do have those weapon skills, we've got skills that are like charismas and stuff like that, like social skills. But yeah, as far as the weapons, it's not just like the dagger skill and sword skill or stuff like that. It's sort of grouped together. Yeah. So like a warrior can be really great with a sword, but for some reason if he gets an axe, then he no longer knows what to do, right? So there'll be some crossover there where you can switch up to a different weapon and still be good at it.
Kind of weapons, swords, bows, everything.
The standard fare. We also know people love pole arms and spears, so those are going to be in there as well. Warhammers, axes, all the good fun stuff. And then we've got magic as well, with the ability to create your own spells. So that'll be a lot of fun for the magic players.
First of all, when's it coming out? I know it's supposed to be this year. Like, what do you guys hope to achieve?
Right. Well, the goal is the end of this year for our Kickstarter backers, which we do still have late backing available on Kickstarter if anybody wants to get in on that. But the goal there is to have our backers give us direct feedback on the game and the systems and what we can improve and what needs work, and then start to implement some of that before we do a more general public release for the early access. And then from there, it'd probably be another couple of years, most likely, until a full release. But, we'll keep those updates coming and expanding.
For your release, is it going to be a PC exclusive or?
Yeah, again, we're just focused on PC for right now. We hope in the future we can bring it to consoles. Obviously, it depends how well it does. If we'll have any money to do so at the end. But yeah, we'd really love to bring it to consoles if we can. A big concern that we have from the community is just like that we're being too ambitious, right? And yeah, we certainly are, but we'd rather, go big than go home or whatever. And part of Julian's thing of, coming back and working on video games again, because he was just doing like other programming stuff for the last several years. But his thing was he wants to make that next big game. He doesn't just want to make Daggerfall again. He's already done Daggerfall, so he wants to push that envelope and see where we can take things. And it's hard, right? We say we got all these like really grand things, and it's really exciting, and it's easy to get a little too hyped. So it's a good reminder that like we are an indie team. We're not like a big AAA studio, so these things won't be like as grand as you can probably imagine them, but they'll be there to some degrees. Like, the seasons will change. The map is huge. These are things we can do.
I think you first found my video when I was like saying Skyrim, the next Skyrim could be the next Skyrim. Mm-hmm. You see it all the time on the internet, right? Like, this is the next Elder Scrolls. Like, how do you guys feel about that tag? Is it something you're trying to separate from, or?
Yeah, I mean, we understand why we're labeled that way. Skyrim is like the big open world RPG that even, however many years now, 13 years, whatever it's been, like it's still relevant. So we understand why that comparison comes, but we do worry a bit because it's not really like Skyrim in the design philosophy. Again, it's Daggerfall, where it's about that scope. It's about that player freedom. It's not that there's anything wrong with Skyrim, but it was a much more narrowed, focused in, storyline and progression and all that stuff. It doesn't have that openness that we're really going for.
I was going to ask, what type of games does the studio draw inspiration from? I'm going to assume Daggerfall and Arena. Is there any other games that you sort of look at as a studio and think that's sort of where we want to be?
Certainly. I mean, especially Ted, like he grew up with all the older classic ones, the Ultima games. Zork was one of his favorites that he got to work on back in the day as well. But just the team as a whole, like we've got a pretty varied interest in different kinds of RPGs. I'm sure if like you name a game, somebody on the team has played it. So we've taken inspiration from a lot of things. I think another big one would be Dark Messiah. It's if you've seen the videos, like we've got the kicking in there. We want to have some of that physics-based combat to make things interesting. So,
and on this interview, in terms of like to help you guys, like for say a subscriber's watching this and they want to get behind the project, what can people do to help you guys out?
Right. Well, the biggest and easiest way to help is to do a late pledge on Kickstarter. Again, you'll get access to the early access build at the end of this year and get to give us direct feedback. You can join our Discord and you'll have a role there and be able to talk to us directly. We also have some merchandise that we sell. It's not the biggest, financial contributor, but it does help a little bit, so people can do that and get some unique items out of it. Other than that, it's really just spreading the word. We'll give you the link tree that you can share on the video, but like we're across pretty much all social media platforms, so whichever one's your favorite, go on there, follow us. We do lots of posts, share lore, screenshots, behind the scenes look. So a lot of good stuff to check out there. We're really just helping spread the word right now. We're still very much unknown. Almost every video that we do, there's like someone saying, how come I've never heard of this before? I just found out about this game. I'm so excited. So just getting that word out and letting people know that we exist would be the biggest help, honestly.
And there you have it, a full breakdown on what the Wayward Realms is and what to expect. Personally, I'm incredibly excited about this project, and the fact that the leaders behind the project created both the Elder Scrolls Arena and Daggerfall, it shows that they have the know-how on how to make a great game. If you want to support the team at Once Lost Games, please check the links in the description, and if you have any questions about the game, put them in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them. But anyway, that's it for this one, but what do you guys think? Are you excited for the Wayward Realms? Do you feel that it could directly compete with the Elder Scrolls 6? Or is there another game that you have in mind? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, please give it the thumbs up, and if you are new here, please consider subscribing. I'm Av Gaming, where we do video game analysis on established games and features on upcoming titles, helping bring the spotlight to upcoming indie studio projects. Thanks for watching. Av out.